we're yearning for an authentic experience, for one. And so much of what we do in general in life these days is so passive.
In an age of distraction, something like birdwatching is actually training our attention.
Yes.
And showing us how to focus on something.
I had felt that simply believing in God was a big enough feat. My faith had never shaped the way I lived each day. I am proof that you can say you love God and offer very little of your life to Him. The practices became a way to call my own bluff.
I'm doing none of them purposefully, restfully, intentionally with the Lord. I've done that in my I can run the race of Christianity without running it with the Lord. You know what I mean? And I think that was part of John Mark Comer put out a book that was like, yeah, me too. Me too. I'm a pastor of this huge church and I'm doing all the right things and I'm dying inside.
I think it stems for me from the idea that Christianity is ultimately about a relationship and what fosters relationship and what doesn't. And in any relationship, distraction is the enemy of intimacy.
Yes.
Teens are developing early onset birder syndrome, or EOBS. Snapchat remains the go-to platform for posting, at least according to the Pew Research Center, and the enduring relevance of John Mark Comer's ruthless elimination of hurry. Welcome to the Roundtable. I'm Evan Barber, and I'm so glad to be back here with you all for my first roundtable in a bit. I'm here today with CJ Fant, Tobin Heim, and Bree Naughton.
Hello.
Welcome back, Evan. We're excited to have you.
Papa Evans.
Thank you so much.
With
Don't ever let me host again. It was a living nightmare.
You did good.
No.
Before we started rolling, Tobin was only complimenting him.
Let's be honest. It's not the same as when Evan does it.
It's true.
I feel so cherished. Thank you.
Excellent.
This week's song, excellent. This week's song of the week is the song "Drop Dead" by Olivia Rodrigo. This song is the first song from Olivia Rodrigo's upcoming album, which is called "You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl So in Love."
Which is her two other albums are just single words in all caps, and then this is like a sentence and a half.
Yeah,
all in
all
lowercase. So
she's switching it
that
up.
feels like a statement.
Evolution of an artist right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
The song has reached as high as number 1 in the most listened songs on Spotify's Daily Top Songs USA chart, and number 3 on Apple Music's Top 100 USA chart. And the song is basically about stalking someone on the internet and developing a crush on them. The line "drop dead" is not meant as an attack or as some ill will coming through towards someone. It is part of the line "kiss me and I might drop dead because I enjoy it so much," is the parenthesis. How does the song strike you guys, particularly in comparison with some of Olivia Rodrigo's previous music?
They shot the video in Versailles. Like, I want to make a point of that.
Yeah.
Like, the song is, I thought the song was very catchy, enjoyable to listen to. Very different for Olivia because it wasn't dark and brooding. But the Versailles thing is very interesting. Nobody's ever shot a music video of Versailles.
Really?
Never. This is the first one. Yep. In the royal apartments, so they may have been on the property, but as far as being in the royal apartments, this is the first. And the folks behind Versailles, whoever that may be, I don't know who that is, but there are folks.
Behind Versailles, what do you mean?
I mean, like the people that own it. I don't know. Who owns Versailles?
Austrian government.
So whoever the government is, the Versailles people released a statement saying that their goal is to get more young people to visit Versailles.
Well, this is the way to do it.
And so they let Olivia have the run of the place.
All right.
It's an interesting video to say the least, but I thought it was largely positive. I mean, she's. It's going to be interesting to hear the whole album and to see how it pans out, but yeah, not too bad.
It's funny that you bring that up because as I was listening to it first, it had that Sofia Coppola, Marie Antoinette kind of feel to it, like the the way that it felt when I was listening to it. And so when I looked at it, I was like, oh, makes sense. That
Versailles.
Versailles.
Yeah.
TJ, first impressions. What strikes you?
If I can be I'm going to be a tiny bit of a hater. I'm a little tired of Olivia Rodrigo's kind of musical sound, especially the singing, talking. Like it's in I feel like it's in all of her songs, and I like Olivia Rodrigo as an artist. I've liked a lot of her stuff, but I feel like it's a little, I don't know. It's fine if artists stay the same. It's fine if artists do new things. It's up to them. It's not up to me. But I feel a little tired of it, is maybe the way
That's
to
why
put
it's
it.
important to get the whole album.
Yeah.
That's why we're waiting to see if that's, if she does break free of some of that.
She totally might. But I mean, and to be fair, like if you're putting out a single, I don't think you put out something that's going to surprise your listeners as much as so there might be more stuff on that, but when I listen to this, my brain just kind of turns off. I feel like a little bit, and so like,
do you think that's the goal? I mean, you're saying that in kind of a negative way, but do you think people like is that a desired response?
Do you mean
Mindless.
like, is it a desired response where you're just like, I know what I'm going to get?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like a lot of the time, what I feel like we do at Access is we're gonna really latch on it and analyze and weigh the lyrics but do you think what people want actually maybe is that reaction?
I struggle to think of an artist outside of like someone who makes lo-fi beats as someone who wants you to not engage with what they wrote and put time into, you know? And even I think someone who makes a lo-fi beat probably still wants you to kind of be like vibing with it, you know? So I would think the answer is no. I don't think Olivia Rodrigo wants me to kind of forget I was listening to her song in the middle of the song, which is sometimes what happens to me.
I love CJ's taste.
But I just, it's not like I'm like mad about it, because I feel like I do that with some music in general, especially, but it's often music I'm so used to. Like I'll do that when I listen to like worship, because I'm like listening to it to play, you know, I'm playing a song at church and I'm listening to a song I've heard a bunch, but I'm just kind of getting it back in my brain. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, I forgot I was listening to In Christ Alone by Kristen Stanfill and the Passion Team, you know, like because I've heard it so much. And so it's almost, I feel like it's that with Rodrigo's music a little bit, where like we talked about it in the write-up, but like Vampire, the single from her previous album, the first one that came out, it has a moment that makes you listen to it. When you just, it's like a hard curse word, and it's like very in the middle of the chorus, and it like grabs your attention. This song, while I applaud it that it doesn't have a lot of that like overly sexual content and kind of language, it doesn't have a moment that really grabs my attention, because it is. And if you see it in the music video, they've got this like soft filter on. It's kind of meant to be dreamy. Yeah. Like kind of that Sofia Coppola, kind of that idea. Like it's meant to be kind of this like dreamy vibe, and the synths kind of add to that. You and I have kicked this around in the past, CJ. CJ and I do tend to talk about music. When you look at the progression of an artist, that's not always necessarily a good thing for their audience. Yeah. Right? Like she can do something radically different and her audience is going to go, yeah, that's terrible. I know. And so I think there's a weird tension that artists fall into, which is like, do I push the boundaries? Do I try something different? Do I try something that's maybe unique? Or do I give people what they've always expected and that they want to hear again? And I mean, I'm not an artist, so I don't know that for a fact. But that's got to be a weird space to be in. I'm like, do I just do the same thing and make millions and millions of dollars? Yeah. Or do I try something different and potentially flop?
But what about like as a consumer? As a consumer, do you like when you can trust what an artist is going to put out, or do you like when artists take risks?
I like it when artists take risks, but I'm also 55. I'm 55. I'm also 55. If I was a 12-year-old girl, if I was in her, Olivia Rodrigo's demographic, I don't know what I would want. I imagine that people want kind of the same thing over and over, because if you look at the artists that have typically fallen in that range, I mean, did Justin Bieber really ever do anything unbelievably different or original?
Yes. What? I think his recent music is very different than his
music. But he's an adult now. When he made his first 5 albums,
I would argue he probably had less creative control, but I don't know for sure when he was younger. Right. Now that Justin Bieber is such a household name, he can walk into a studio and say, I want to do this, which is, I think the clearest example is Taylor Swift, right? She has remained successful and changed her sound so many times. Like her albums are so unique and there's a push and a pull for sure. I don't know if it's truly correct, but I always think like, oh, when artists change their sound, it's probably because they wanted to. And it's not because there's like a bunch of people in suits pushing them to do it because they'll make more money. I think staying the same is always the thing. Like if we look at the movie industry, a lot of industries, it's like, well, the safe thing to do is the thing that has already worked, right? So we'll remake Moana 10 years after it came out.
Right.
Like, what are we doing?
Right.
You know? Anyway, sorry, that's my Moana take. Anyway.
Yeah. I think one more question I'll ask, and you alluded to this a little bit already. You know, the song, there's some profanity, there's some kind of sexual references, not quite on the level of the previous stuff that she's done. And it's also enough in the background that you might not actually catch it unless you're reading the lyrics. Curious how would you guys hope that parents might approach those elements of a song like this?
I think approaching it in the awareness of it, probably from the jump, you know what I mean? It's just knowing that it's there. And I do agree with you, though, specifically for this song, is that if you're not paying close attention to it, you might just miss it. Probably kind of with what CJ was saying is that the melodic portion of it is just pretty, you know, dreamy, flat. So you just aren't paying too close attention, but it's there for sure. Talks about like, you know, clothes dropping on the floor and different things like that, wanting to be in bed together. So it's definitely there. So
awareness.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to me in situations like this. She knows who her audience is. And so it's like she's presenting just enough explicit material to not have parents like rush to the computer and turn it off, right? Like, so there's some, it's a little bit exploitative just in terms of like, I'm going to use just enough of that language to where parents aren't going to freak out, but that my listeners will be like excited or stimulated about that, right? And so it feels, I always feel like if you know that your audience is 12-year-olds, don't do that.
Right.
Like you don't have to do that. And so I will always be sad that artists don't press into that space more of like, hey, I'm really going to deliver something that's, you know, maybe a little safer, but that's just me. I'm old.
Some say I have an old soul, so maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm sort of with you there. Any final thoughts from you, CJ? Or
Versailles in France. That's my final
good.
thought. Just my self-correction. I was like, I
Wait,
knew
what
it
did
when
you
I
say
said,
before?
I said it was in Austria.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even hear you say that.
When you were like, who's the people behind Versailles? And I
you
said
said
the
Austria.
Austrian government.
Okay, I'll leave it to Jordan to decide.
Part
whether
of
we
learning
make
is
that-
self-correction,
you have to
everyone.
leave that in.
I'm an American.
Austria.
I know geography.
All right, with that, let's exit the song again. It's called Drop Dead by Olivia Rodrigo. Shout out to Versailles.
And France.
And to France.
No, don't shout out. I'm just kidding.
First thing from the top three, bird brains. More and more young people are diagnosing themselves with early onset birder syndrome, which is the sudden, all-consuming urge to watch, photograph, and categorize birds.
That's a real medical condition.
Yeah, it's in the DSM-5. Or 6, whatever number we're on now. Bonner Black, a singer, songwriter, and now birder, said she picked up the hobby during a mental health crisis and became completely hooked. She explains the appeal this way. I have to be so present in that moment. No screens, no texts, no outside noise. It totally regulates my nervous system in a way nothing else can. Tobin, first question to you.
Yeah.
Before other publications started writing about this, do you think you would have been able to predict, or had you already kind of picked up that bird watching was becoming one of the big things for Gen Z?
I did pick up on that, Evan. Thank you for
Thank you for asking.
How did you pick up on
Thank
that?
you for asking.
Do you just see
So
Gen Z out in the woods?
There were a lot of activities during COVID that really started to take off. And this activity is one of them, right? Like if you look back over the last 10 years and the kind of the progression of bird watching, man, this sounds so serious. But anyhow,
bird watching, yes.
It was an activity that you could do outside. It lent itself to social distancing. Like there was just a lot of camping became very big because you're just going out into the wilderness
And no
and
one
you're
was
in
doing
fresh
it.
air and And then all of a sudden camping, becomes a big thing. Golf, experience some of that because you could be outdoors and socially distance and still participate in activity. Bird watching was a part of that. And so if you look over the data, which I'm glad to bring data to the conversation on birds.
Finally.
I'm grateful for that.
Finally.
As
Do you
well.
know
It's
that
about
birding
time.
is a $60 billion industry worldwide?
What does that mean?
It means that people are eco-traveling.
People are paying to see the birds.
People are eco-traveling.
I was like, is that binocular sales?
That number is projected to be at 95 billion by 2030. So
What?
3 years from now.
Jump into birding.
So when you say eco-traveling,
So
that's
even-
just that's traveling, or is that different?
That's people who will travel and do bird watching related
Mm-hmm.
activities, buying books, getting binoculars, whatever
those
else.
hats that are all the way around,
The,
they're
hill,
like
the
floppy-
Hillsong hats.
the floppy ones.
bucket
you
hat.
know?
Anyhow, thank you for that, CJ.
What are those hats called? I don't know. Sun
So
hats?
in the U.S., it's a $15 billion industry right now. And so if you look at the financial metrics, yeah, it's really, really taking off.
Wow.
You look surprised.
I am a bit
And then you
surprised.
You look at the platforms. You look at eBirds and you look at Merlin.
Yeah.
Merlin is actually the base database behind eBirds. So if you want to get to the core of it, you look at Merlin Cornell Labs.
Okay. Merlin, named for the famed wizard of old.
I would assume that that's the name, although I don't know what he had to do with birds. But that might
was
have
gonna
just
be-
been a marketing misstep on their part. They have three.
Oh, didn't he use bird?
In that Disney movie, he turns into a bird.
Thank
Well,
you.
there you go.
I knew it was there. I knew the connection was there.
Merlin has a
Oh, great.
database of 3 million different bird characterizations. So they've got the sound, they've got photos, they've got descriptions. And so anything you want to know about birds, they're able to pull from their database and tell you what you're likely to be looking at. So Merlin is the core database, and then eBird uses that database. But use of both of those platforms has skyrocketed as well.
I feel like you're converting Evan. I feel like Evan's ready to go birding.
I'm about to go out right now.
So I
and just start
think
looking
it's,
up.
I think it's a peaceful activity, right? You're in nature, you're discovering something, you're able to keep track of birds that you've seen and species that you've interacted with, and so I think there's a lot of like analog appeal, right? Like it's
Yeah.
the thing that's interesting to me though is even that activity is only fueled by applications.
Yeah.
So like I couldn't identify a bird that I saw if I didn't go to eBird, which is an app.
Yeah.
Right. So it's this weird, I get to be out in nature and there's no screens, except when I go back to my house. And then there's a lot of screens because I
Yeah.
want to figure out what I just looked at.
Eventually, though, in theory, you would be able to identify without the screens, especially if you're just, you live in Colorado.
The screens train you.
There's only so many birds, although there was a roadrunner in Colorado recently, guys. It's
Really?
pretty rare. Get out there.
Are you a
Wow.
birder, CJ?
No, I saw a news article about it and I was like, that's cool.
Who writes a news article about a roadrunner in Colorado?
You'd be
It's
surprised.
a $15 billion industry, Tobin.
That's true.
You got to write
I
an
stand
article.
corrected.
Yeah.
This is
This is
phenomenal.
Your own data.
I am so grateful that you brought so much data to this conversation.
I mean, you guys ever stop and listen to like bird song? It's nice. Like get outside and listen to some birds.
Yeah. I
It's like
should do
it's
that.
like a nice moment.
This whole section is just me being convinced.
Every time I hear a mourning dove, I'm like, ooh, that's nice.
Just the fact that you can identify a mourning dove is relatively impressive.
Mourning doves are one of the most iconic bird sounds. You know what a mourning dove is. You know what the sound is.
I know
You
what
might you don't have the two tied together.
I know what
the
a
name.
chicken sounds like.
So, I
My
learned,
favorite bird song, a chicken.
So I learned in addition to what we've already kind of alluded to, the sort of it forces you to be present in the moment, all those kinds of dynamics. Apparently, there was a small study published in the Journal of Neuroscience that concluded that birdwatching can help build neuroplasticity and help the brain protect itself against the negative impacts of aging. I don't know if that's just because it's forcing you to pay careful attention to specific things, and maybe that could have just as easily been worm watching or something. I'm not sure, but I'm more and more intrigued by this.
Yeah, I think if I understand it right, part of the excitement of birdwatching is like you're seeing something for the first time, you're experiencing a unique event. Like there are certain birds that are harder to find than others, and that's why the ecotourism part comes in, because there are certain species of birds that people really want to see, and they want to be able to say, I saw this whatever bird in the wilderness, and so I think there's a bit of a dopamine hit even to that, which is really interesting, right? Like it's a very soothing, subtle kind of pastime, and yet there is that little bit of like, oh, I got to see something that very few people get to see.
It seems like this is sort of, don't forget what you were going to say, Brie. Seems like this is sort of a piece. A couple weeks ago, we released a video on kind of some Gen Z women getting interested in knitting and what are called grandma hobbies, that kind of thing. Bird watching is something I would for sure have typically thought of in the grandma hobby category, right? So it seems like that's sort of a piece with that. And yet, I think one of the things that's unique about bird watching is it kind of forces you to, you kind of have to surrender to the experience. You don't get to just go out and declare that a particular bird is going to show up. You have to kind of almost offer yourself to the moment.
And what do we talk about all the time? Like, kids don't go outside anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Turns out
and
they
so
do
this
now.
is an activity that you literally can't do indoors. And so, when you look at the appeal of something like this, I think it's pushing kids and young people in the right direction of like, you have to be quiet, right? You have to be outdoors. You have to be present. You have to be observant. You have to be, a lot of things that I think people in my generation decry as like, oh, they don't do that anymore. They don't have any of these. And I think that's part of the appeal, right? Is it's getting young people to do stuff that maybe we don't usually associate with that generation.
What were you going to say, Brie?
There's no passivity to it at all. You cannot go out and just be passive in this experience. And I think that there's something that our culture is yearning for and wanting, whether we recognize it, right out there or not, is that we're yearning for an authentic experience, for one. And so much of what we do in general in life these days is so passive. Sometimes we listen to music passively, we scroll passively, sometimes we read, we watch TV, we take in so much passively that to have something where you have to be entirely tuned in, you're looking at all these varieties of just this one creature.
Yeah.
They all make different sounds, they move differently, they fly differently, they participate in different, rituals within their kind differently. And you have to be completely tuned in. I think that there's something that we were created for that. And I think it's calling to that part of us,
To that point, I love things that make you see the world differently. I noticed when I first started learning to play drums, I started listening to music differently because I couldn't not hear what the drummer was doing.
Exactly.
And now I know what a drummer's doing, but I can listen to music maybe more where I less focus on it. But I love that it's like this idea of like, you can't go out, if Tobin, you take the time and you look on the apps and all those sorts of things, and you get to the point where you can identify a bunch of different Colorado bird songs, let's say, and then you walk outside, that's going to change your experience. You're going to be more like almost embodied in that moment where you're like, oh, I know what that bird is. You hear something, you're like, oh, yeah, I immediately recognize that as, like a blue jay or whatever it is,
Yeah, what I hear you guys saying is that in an age of distraction, something like bird watching is actually training our attention.
Yes.
And showing us how to focus on something. There's this, it makes me think of, there's a quote from Simone Weil, who is a French mystic. She said,
from Versailles?
Not Austrian,
right just outside of Versailles.
Not Austrian.
She said, attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. And I think that's true in relationship. And what an interesting possibility that something like bird watching could be a way to practice being attentive to what's going on in front of us. So I think that's beautiful. I'm fully persuaded. Tobin?
I'm just going to say this
Brie.
one last thing. There, the whole concept of deep cries out to deep. I think that there is something that has been deeply created within us that cries out to the depth that has been created apart from us. And I think those two things really attract one another because we were made for more, so that's what I see in this.
That's good. Yeah. Thank you for that, Brie. I was going to ask you, Tobin, if someone wanted to start a conversation about bird watching, what's a question they could ask?
So here's where I'd go with it. What behaviors do you find soothing? What hobbies do you find to be soothing? because I think kids spend so much time being stimulated and not soothed that anything as parents we can do to get them participating in soothing behaviors is really helpful.
What's the difference between stimulation and soothing? Just quickly.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, stimulation tends to be loud and aggressive and fast paced, and it's video games, it's music, it's where the stimuli is very high. Something like knitting, the stimulus is very low, right? You've got needles and yarn, and that's about it. Birdwatching, similar deal. You've got birds and nature. But I if I was going to start a conversation with Emma about this, my place of start would be like, what is soothing about this, or what do you find to be soothing? Because as parents, we talk about self-soothing is a big deal. And so many people can't do that now. And so figuring out how do I get my kids involved in activities that model that or teach that or have that as a part of their function, I think is pretty appealing.
Hey everyone, I'm Bree here at Axis. I just wanted to jump in and let you know that this podcast episode is made possible by The Table, a community of monthly givers fueling Axis's mission to keep every resource free for families everywhere. We receive stories like this one all the time. I'm a mom of a 15-year-old and we listen to Axis's podcasts constantly on our drives. Periodically, we'll pause them to talk about what we're learning or to engage some of the conversation starters they provide. It has transformed our car rides together. We want to invite you to join The Table and to be a part of helping parents and teens just like this story build lasting faith together, one conversation at a time. Join our community today at www.axis.org/thetable.
All right, next up, Lurking USA. The newest Pew Research Center data on teen social media usage shows that many young people are passive users of TikTok and Instagram, using those platforms primarily to consume and reserving most of their posting for Snapchat. 57% of 13 to 17-year-olds say they message people at least daily on Snapchat, with only 34% saying the same thing for Instagram and 24% for TikTok. First question is to you, Bree.
Yeah.
What stands out to you about this data and about the survey more broadly?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I personally found this survey so interesting because what it did was Pew Research took 1,458 U.S. teens between the ages of 13 and 17, and over a short period of time, they wanted to talk about Snapchat, TikTok, and Instagram. But what they also did was take the same amount of parents of 13 and 17-year-olds and kind of pin their opinions against one another. And I think that was what was most interesting to me about this research, because what this study does is it breaks down the usage between, why are teens using it? What do they use it for? What do they do for messaging? How do they feel about their screen time on it? How does it affect their mental health? And what was the findings of it was that it seemed that teens had a highly different opinion, most especially around mental health, screen time, things like that, than their parents who were watching them do it did. So some of the findings were that of all three sites, the most common reason why a teen would be on the social media in general is for entertainment purposes only. They are passive with TikTok and they are passive with Instagram, but they are highly more active with Snapchat. And I think one of the things that we posed was, is it because Snapchat disappears within 24 hours and there's something about that that doesn't feel permanent in the way that when we post on TikTok and Instagram, it's so much more curated. We really think about what we're putting out there. However, they use all three sites pretty actively. So they tend to lurk a little bit more on TikTok and Instagram, and then they tend to be plugged in on Snapchat as far as like friendships and things are concerned.
So I think there's a structure to the social medias that alludes to that a little bit. Like if you were to look at the YouTube stats, it's going to be like, 5% of people send messages to each other on YouTube, because that's not the goal of it. And I feel like TikTok definitely has positioned itself as a place to watch like little short
Content.
videos,
Can you-
not talk to your friends necessarily, right? And you can do that. You can send messages on TikTok, but most of the time it's, I shared a TikTok with my
Sure.
friend on TikTok, and then they watched the TikTok and they said, haha, and then we moved on with our lives or whatever it is.
I don't.
You know,
I don't think I even knew you could send messages on YouTube.
I actually don't know if you can.
Okay.
Like, I'm sure it's Google. You probably can somewhere.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry,
In
carry on.
Austria.
Yeah.
You can do anything in Austria, especially in Versailles.
And then like Snapchat, I think obviously in its function began as a messaging service.
Right.
Sure.
It's like if iMessage suddenly had a feed of content, like you'd probably still use it to text your friends, you
Yeah.
know. And Snapchat does have a feed of content, but so it's almost kind of like, yes, you have described the platforms.
But I
a
would
little
be
bit,
curious though, because I do feel like most especially I feel like Snapchat has kind of stayed the same no matter what. You know exactly when you sign up for it, you know exactly what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
But I would say over the years, Instagram and TikTok have kind of changed in how people interact with them and how they use them. So not to age myself, but I was one of the first generation when Instagram came out. And
So you have like 2,000 Instagram posts because you
100.
posted every photo you took.
Except, and with the good filters on them too.
yes,
And I feel like when Instagram first came out, I mean, everybody was on it. Everybody was messaging. Everybody was using it. And then I also feel the same. We kind of jumped from Instagram over to TikTok. Everybody was sharing their content. It was so much more at the time organic in the ways that we would post it. And that has definitely changed on TikTok, I would say. Like, I feel like 75% of it is advertising, or if you've posted a video, you're trying to advertise something.
Check it out on the TikTok shop.
Exactly. Which, listen, maybe I have. Okay. Maybe I bought a few. So.
Yeah, I feel like I feel pretty immune to the idea that social media is primarily a place to go for entertainment.
Right.
But I do feel like it's worth just naming that is kind of new because entertainment is not the same thing as connection.
Yep.
And that was sort of where all this started.
That was what social media was supposed to be.
Right.
It was
And
supposed to be social.
Exactly. And so, I mean, it's just like TV now in a lot of respects.
Yep.
I think kids are able to create ecosystems of the platforms that do the stuff that they want to get done, and there's not a brand loyalty component of that. And I think if you look at Facebook or Instagram or some of the others, they've tried to morph to really represent the desires of the audience, or they're trying to compete with another platform. And I think kids are smart enough to see, like, nobody's going to Instagram better than Instagram, right? Nobody's going to just serve up content the way that TikTok can. Nobody's going to handle messaging the way that Snapchat can.
Right.
And so they're going to these different platforms because those platforms are the best at what they do. And I think that's what CJ maybe was alluding to, of like, they all have different purposes. And as much as those platforms try to reinvent themselves to do everything that a user could want to experience, kids still know, like, Snapchat is better for this and TikTok is better for that. And so they're brand agnostic, right? They'll just go across all the different platforms to create an experience that they value.
One of the things that I found really interesting when I was reading it was that when it got to the mental health components of it, and they're surveying the teens, most of these teens said that they didn't actually feel like any one of these platforms had either necessarily a positive impact on their mental health, but also not a negative impact on their health, which I thought was really interesting. And they did say if they were going to trend one way or the other, they actually felt like it was more positive.
Right.
But then if you kind of scroll a little bit further, 75% of them also said they felt like cyberbullying was an issue on social media. And so there was a portion of this research that I kind of felt when you're, and I don't want to speak for the three of you, but I don't know how tuned in I was to my inner world in 13 through 17. I don't know how much I was really taking in how things were affecting me, what, like, the movies I was watching, the music I was listening to. I just liked it because I liked it. I wasn't really mining the depths of my soul.
I think you have to be a little older and a little bit more introspective to determine that. Like you said, 13 to 17 is probably not accurately reflecting their mental or emotional state.
Right.
I know that Emma, now in her mid-20s, is able to look back and go, hey, that was really damaging.
Exactly.
So she would not have said that when she was 13, 14, 15 years old.
Right.
But as she's in her early 20s now, she's completely off social media because she realizes the negative effects that had. So I'm not sure that 13 to 17-year-old demographic can accurately self-report. I think we've all heard stories and data about kids starting to get a little bit older and having a different perspective on social media.
Yeah.
One of my questions off of that is, to what extent is that inevitable because the human brain is just not fully developed at that
Right.
age? Or is it more so just a question of we just aren't teaching young people how to recognize their own emotions, and that we actually could say to them, hey, if something bad happens to you and then you feel all tense, that's called sadness. Or we could like help them name it in a way that might actually set up a different future. I mean,
Well, what's so
nature versus
interesting-
nurture, I guess, is the question.
All of us in this room have the vantage point of sitting in seats and remembering what life was like prior to these sort of platforms existing. And so we do have that vantage point to be able to look at like, ooh, I do see how this is affecting, but this generation has never not known
Yeah,
it.
it's just this is water.
And so
right?
they're swimming in this pool. They're drinking from this well all the time. And I think that would make it really difficult to differentiate what feels good to my soul and what doesn't. Because even to the extent that I participate in social media, I know when I've been on it too long. I can feel it. And I have concerns for younger generations that they might not have that trigger point for them of like, this doesn't feel good anymore because this is all I've ever known. And that shows up in the research because even though teens are saying this, their parents are contradicting it and saying like, no, I absolutely think I'm seeing an effect on my kids. I absolutely think they're spending too much time on this. I absolutely think it affects their mental health, their productivity, their sleep, because those parents have a totally different vantage point. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it seems so interesting to me because on the one hand, maybe there is this level of, if I'm a 13-year-old and all I've ever known is life on TikTok and Snapchat, et cetera, to what extent am I able to be able to say, yeah, to what extent am I able to kind of zoom out from myself and say, this is actually harming me?
Yes.
Right? On the one hand, I see that. On the other hand, a lot of what I feel like this study was reporting, parents think kids are spending too much time on social media. Kids don't. It's like, I feel like that's a story we've been hearing for 20 years, right? And so it seems somewhat inevitable, but also maybe it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I understand where you're going with it too. And there's so many nuances to it as well, because it's also like how tuned in are parents to the various platforms too. Like how tuned in are parents to Snapchat? I don't hear many parents talking about Snapchat that much. And even this reports that like the most uncomfortable platform parents have is TikTok. They don't understand it. They're uncomfortable with it. They see the most negative influence from it. But from my vantage point, I actually see like a ton of negative influence from Snapchat. You can put something out there that quote unquote disappears within 24 hours unless somebody screenshots it, and then it lives forever just like everything else does. And it's this almost like secret world of messaging and all of this stuff that parents aren't really even paying attention to.
Anecdotally, like a lot of the parents I've talked to, I met their teens probably 4 or 5 years ago, so now they're in college, but that was always the one that they were the latest to let their student.
Snapchat.
Yeah, Snapchat. Like Instagram was before Snapchat for them. And partly for that reason, but partly because there's a level of just default private messaging on Snapchat. And to be fair, a lot of these students I know have, gone on a lot of dates on Snapchat, and that's like more normal there. So if someone is like looking for that, that's probably where they would be in terms of like a negative influence or like a predatorial sort of like angle. Whereas like you can do that on Instagram, but it's just less common there.
Yep.
And so I found that very interesting when I was talking to some parents, like, oh, actually Snapchat was the one we were most worried about. Where it was a little bit before, like I had these conversations with them a little bit before the ubiquity of TikTok. So maybe that conversation's different now, but
Tobin, you were going to say something.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think every generation decries the media consumption of the upcoming generation, and they're willing to attribute a negative impact. So when I was that age, it was the music we listened to,
Right.
And this music is going to, turn you into a horrible person. Right? You're gonna do
Devils in
things
that music.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so I don't think it's a new behavior for parents to say, hey, this is having a negative impact. And for a kid to say, no, it's not actually having a negative impact. I think that's always happened.
Yeah, that's some of what I was trying to get at is that sort of disconnect. To what extent is that just a part of there being different generations?
Yeah.
Right. I think that's a big part of it. I think it's that lack of understanding breeds contempt, right? Like it's, I don't understand it, so it must be bad.
Which tends to be a little bit of human nature in
I think
general,
that's right.
When we don't understand something, we tend to be afraid of it. And if we're afraid of it, then it's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of interesting directions on this conversation. Bree, I'm curious, is there one angle that you feel like is most important to lean into here?
I love the direction that Tobin was just going with this because I do think curiosity in so many ways can like cure the world, and I think so often that can be a missing component between parents and kids. And I think if I'm talking about a conversation starter, begin with curiosity. So tell me what you like about Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and what about these platforms keeps you coming back, and just see what your kids say. And then that conversation begets another question. Is just begin with curiosity in a way that's non-judgmental and just like help me understand more. That's where I would begin.
Final thing this week, ruthlessness. A new profile of John Mark Comer's life and ministry in The Atlantic surveys the enduring impact of his approach to digitally minimal discipleship, highlighted particularly in his book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. In an interview with Nancy Walecki, I think, Comer said this: any version of discipleship to Jesus that doesn't seriously take into account your phone is going to be wildly deficient. The article portrays followers of John Mark Comer as often being ones who switch their phones to grayscale mode to make it purposefully more boring, maybe delete social media apps from their phone, and try things like 24-hour phone Sabbaths. And while Comer is hardly the only one proposing these kinds of interventions, he does kind of stand out as one of the main voices who is linking doing these kinds of things with our ability to connect with God. So I want to start with you, CJ, and I want to ask you kind of a broad question. Take it where you will. I feel like there's an overlap between being a digital minimalist, maybe, and trying to connect with God. They're not the same thing. One doesn't inevitably follow from the other. But I'm curious, what is that? What is the relationship between those two things in your view?
Man, I would argue, and I think Comer has probably said something like this in some of his writing, that I think there's a lack of fulfillment we get from our digital consumption, the media that we engage with, the ways that we entertain ourselves online, that sort of thing. I think there's a dynamic where, just like I think a lot of really prominent theologians have identified, there's something in our souls that long for more. And even when we're given basically the purest extent of like a dopamine, fire hydrant, just like a hose pointed right at our face, like we can consume and consume and consume, and then we still, at the end of the day, we feel like our life is unfulfilled, that there's something more that we should be engaging with, that there's something more that we should be doing, that there's like that we realize that it all kind of comes to nothing in the end. And I think rightly, when we kind of hook ourselves up to like the IV of dopamine and like phones and those sorts of things, it can make us numb to that a little bit. And so what happens is we're kind of numb to it while we're scrolling TikTok or whatever, but then we get off and that's when it hits really hard.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit of what Comer talks about. I think he talks about it less in Ruthless Elimination of Hurry because it was less of what he was talking about in those moments. I think Ruthless Elimination of Hurry is a book that came out before the pandemic. And obviously the pandemic didn't change everything, but I do think a big thing he was talking about was this idea of like striving and like how do we like realize that maybe like career success isn't the thing that will give us fulfillment. And, you know, I would say in 2026, there might be less of that for young people and more just like, how do I be happy with what I have? But not necessarily like, how do I become numb to what I don't have is maybe more accurate, you know, but that's a whole other conversation. Yeah. I would say that's a big part of it is just identifying that even when we engage with entertaining things, we still kind of feel like we're not being fulfilled and that there's this kind of, you know, whatever term you want to use, but there's something inside of our souls that cries out for the Lord, you know.
Yeah, this is nothing new.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think it gets packaged sometimes as a new thing because the dopamine vehicles are so much more abundant. But if you look at the monastic tradition, there's always been a group of believers that have said the only way to really do this right is to eliminate all distraction, even to the point of not speaking, right? And so this feels like that for a modern age in terms of saying, hey, if you really want to connect with the Lord, if you really want to be in tune with your spiritual self, you have to eliminate distraction. But again, that's not a new thing, right? Every generation going back hundreds and hundreds of generations has had some version of this view that if I don't eliminate all of the noise, I will never truly connect with my creator. I think Comer's more practical, right? He's not telling us to go lock ourselves away in caves. But I think anything that's stood the test of time like that, like even our staff, we do spiritual retreat days, and a lot of our staff will go have silent retreats at a retreat center or monastery or whatever. And nobody comes back going, yeah, it really was terrible to be quiet for 8 hours. Like that's a deeply meaningful experience to most of our staff that participate in that.
Though it may not be easy.
Oh, I don't think it's
Right.
I don't think it's easy.
Stuff can come up.
because
and-
we
yeah.
don't do it as a regular discipline.
right.
I think anything like that becomes easier over time. But when the staff gets a taste of that, there's an awesomeness about it, right? You're able to hear and listen and experience things that you might not have otherwise.
I think there's also a point. One of the things I find really interesting about Comer, and Bree, you can speak to this, I think, because you read the book. But and actually, I knew about Jenna and I. Actually, Jenna, my coworker, our coworker, who has been on the podcast before, her and I had actually a pretty long conversation about Comer. And one of the things we talked about was just how great. This sounds so strange, but stay with me. How fantastic the design of the book is of it is like specifically the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, the design of that book.
It's so specific.
It's such a distinct color of orange / red. Like it's like kind of in between. It's so subtle in its like texting, like it's text on the front, but it's so bright in terms of color that like you walk into a coffee shop, you can immediately see that someone's reading that book. And so it's interesting because it does create conversation because you'll be like, oh, I read that book, or you go talk to somebody or whatever it is. But actually, what the book did was it actually attracted a lot of secular readers. Like there's a lot of people, and Jen and I had this conversation where Practicing the Way felt like it was very clearly, which is when I think I've read 3 Comer books, but the 2 I remember the most are Ruthless Elimination of Hurry and Practicing the Way. Practicing the Way is very much for believers. It's for people who are inside the church, who follow Jesus and want to do that in a more practical, maybe devout way. Jenna kind of, I don't want to speak for her, but one of the things we talked about was like, she almost felt like it was a bait and switch with Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, that it's like this self-help book. But then halfway through, Comer's like, but also Jesus, which is a cool way of doing that. But I do think there's like this appeal to devotion and a specific way of living that actually transcends Christianity. Maybe like, I don't know, I didn't live in the time of monks. I know there are still monks today, but like in the time where that was like a dominant force in the Christian faith, where like if I was out working a field or whatever, I don't know if I would have been like, oh man, maybe I should live like a monk. maybe I should go do that. But there's something about his conversation about the way that we engage with entertainment and busyness and striving that is really appealing to people who don't even follow Jesus necessarily, to the point where there's this, I found that this quote kind of floored me in the Atlantic article, and I'm going to read it. So this is Nancy Walecki, right? That was her name.
I believe so.
As a Christian, she's talking about herself, as a Christian moving in mostly secular circles, I had felt that simply believing in God was a big enough feat. My faith had never shaped the way I lived each day. I am proof that you can say you love God and offer very little of your life to him. The practices became a way to call my own bluff. So essentially, she decided to try some of the things that Comer was encouraging in his books and found that it was significant for her, but she was realizing that there's this way of living that is different than I had been living, and I actually, that it betrayed my devotion. It betrayed the level of my devotion that I had. It revealed it. It unveiled it. And so I find that really interesting, and I think it's such an interesting point that even people who are not following the Lord or in church environments or even care about Jesus, they find use and practical use of this, and they find that they desire it, that they desire to rest and to strive less and to maybe take a day off every week to have a Sabbath, like we were talking about with some friends who we hung out over the weekend with, that they've been doing a ministry where they focus on Sabbath and kind of being more analog on the Sabbath. And they've found that a ton of non-believers are approaching them and really curious about, how do I do this? Like, that's so interesting to me. How does that relate to teen culture? I'm not entirely sure, but I do think teens are curious about this and young adults are curious about it.
Well, I mean, just quickly, I think teens are the recipient of a culture of burnout and just exhaustion. And that so many teens receive that pressure in the form of extracurriculars, and you got to be playing X number of sports, and you blah, 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 blah. Like, all these things can pile up so easily. And I think it's because the example that many young people get is an example of burnout. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting to see this. Obviously, this book we're talking about has been around for 7 years at this point, right? But continuing to be such a force of needing escape from the culture of burnout. I think even if we can be like even more honest in the sense that like American Christianity can be just as much of a distraction as anything in the sense of how we participate in it. I went to prayer night on Wednesday, and I went on Sunday, and we went to youth group, and I went on the weekend and I did the winter camp, and I did, and I'm doing all these things. And yet I'm doing none of them purposefully, restfully, intentionally with the Lord. I've done that in my, I can run the race of Christianity without running it with the Lord. You know what I mean? And I think that was part of the ruthless elimination of hurry. Was John Mark Comer put out a book that was like, yeah, me too. Me too. I'm a pastor of this huge church, and I'm doing all the right things, and I'm dying inside. And so that book actually like lives on my nightstand, not in the sense of I just read it over and over and over again, but I have read it a couple of times now because my proclivity is to productivity. My proclivity is towards like, what can I accomplish? Yeah. Even if I think what I'm accomplishing is for the right reasons or for the right things, you know? And I think it's everything we've talked about today has been from down to bird watching to...
The parallel between this and bird watching is very funny to me.
100%.
Yeah, right.
There is just a bright red thread line there. And I believe that there is something that is happening in our culture, even down to, CJ, what you were referencing with Analog Sunday, shout out Bree and Julian, they're sensing, they're picking up on something too, that our souls are begging for it, and Jesus is beckoning us to it, you know? And so, I
think it stems for me from the idea that Christianity is ultimately about a relationship, and what fosters relationship and what doesn't. And in any relationship, distraction is the enemy of intimacy.
Yes.
Right? And so I think what what he's pointing out is not new, right? And I think it's the latest and certainly well presented and well packaged. But I think we would all say we know the stuff that gets in the way of our relationships. We know the distractions. We know the activities. We know we've all been around those families that are super church involved and they don't really have a close relationship, but they're at church all the time. And is that activity at church drawing you closer in relationship to Christ, or is it just another activity? And I think that's what many individuals and families struggle with. And I think there will always be a voice that's a cry in the wilderness that says it's about the relationship.
Yes.
Right? It's about drawing closer, becoming more intimate, becoming more familiar, becoming more dependent on the person of Christ. And Comer is just the latest and most apt person to deliver that message.
And I think sometimes we just need an invitation and a reminder to it. Like, CJ, not to call you out or anything right now, but I remember, at some point last year, you had taken a step back from, serving and vocational ministry and things like that because you were tending to your soul before you stepped back in. It was something that you felt like you needed to do. And I remember you telling me about that and me just internally applauding it so much, because that says something about our willingness and our like real relationship with the Lord, to say like, hey, this good thing is actually not doing its job and serving in a good way. I'm going to take a step back for a minute, not forever, for a minute, so I can get right and step back in. And I think that's what John Mark Comer's doing, is like, it's an invitation to the masses of like, it is okay to disconnect.
Or to take a break.
Like
your life isn't about productivity.
Yes,
because that doesn't necessarily actually create intimacy with the Lord, or even like being productive all the time doesn't even necessarily like build the kingdom as much as it could for you to just like take a day off every week, or 2 days off every week, or whatever it is.
A Sabbath.
A Sabbath.
As it were. Very, very thought-provoking. Thank you all.
because we weren't made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for us. Like God knew we needed it.
Yes. Right.
Another thing Jenna talked about was that John Mark Comer kind of has just been saying what Dallas Willard has been saying. So.
Oh yeah. Well, the title of this book is a quote from Dallas Willard. So there's a whole other thing we could go into there, but you talked about how some of this is maybe a little bit only tangentially related to the next generation. But I'm curious, is there any angle here? Maybe it's a conversation about rest that you think would be worth asking about. What do you think? Yeah,
I mean, I actually feel like I was inspired by what Tobin said. I think there's a I think an easy conversation starter to be like, when do you feel most connected with your friends? Like, when do you feel like you are getting along with them the best, or like most connected, I think is a way. I don't necessarily want to say intimate, because it'd probably be like a guy-to-guy friendship, and that might be a weird question to ask a high school boy, but like, when do you like appreciate and feel the most connected to your friends? And then that conversation leads very simply into, and how does that apply to your relationship with the Lord? What do you think you can learn about your relationship with the Lord from your relationship with your friends? And they're not one-to-one relationships. They're very different. But a lot of the things we learn in our relationships with our friends and our, girlfriends or boyfriends or spouses or whatever it is, can help us learn how to walk with the Lord. And vice versa.
Well said. Thanks for tuning in to the Roundtable this week. On your way out, here's a quick survey of some of the rest of the cultural landscape. Number 1, young people are speedrunning their bachelor's and master's degrees, finishing them in as quickly as 3 months, as less traditional forms of university attendance become more popular. Number 2, Tomodachi Life, Living the Dream, is the newest game in Nintendo's Oddest series, which plays as a mix between The Sims and Animal Crossing. And its brand of social engineering has made for a fair bit of internet hilarity.
A lot of people have been describing it as, it's like you're playing with dolls. And it's actually scarily accurate. Where you're like, what if these two were like, what if this person was a couple with this person? And then it's just like funny. It's just, it's such a strange game.
The Sims was kind of like that, and that was huge for quite a while.
It's weirder than The Sims. Sims
That's
is
saying something.
The Sims kind of like lives up to its like, we're trying to make a simulation. But Tomodachi Life is like, what if it was weird?
Okay. Number 3, Coachella continued into its second weekend, highlighted by Justin Bieber inviting Billie Eilish on stage, Madonna joining Sabrina Carpenter, and Karol G as the first Latina artist to headline.
One of the interesting things about Coachella, I don't know, is like how many if you watch any footage of it, it's just phones.
Oh, yeah.
It's just everyone like...
Used to be lighters, now it's phones.
Yeah, but everyone's just filming it. And you're like,
You're
cool.
there. You're there.
It's about the clout. It's
right.
about the productivity.
That's right.
Yeah.
Always need more content. Number 4, some trend spotters are calling rainbow flip-flops the shoe of the summer. Tobin's shaking his head in
If you've ever owned a pair of rainbow flip-flops, it takes at least a summer to break them in.
Okay.
So if that's the shoe of the summer and then you're done, you're going to be in a lot of pain for a very little amount of time.
Maybe it should be the shoe of next summer. Instead of...
That would make more sense to me.
You should have started wearing them 2 months ago.
right. Number 5, the meteoric rise of the band Geese has led some to wonder if there's been some conspiracy behind their popularity. To be fair, social media marketing can sometimes feel more CIA than Don Draper, and streaming numbers are often manipulated. Stay tuned on that one. We'll have links in the show notes if you want to explore these further. For now, goodbye from all of us, and we'll see you back here next week.
Goodbye.
Thanks so much for watching. This podcast is made possible because of our generous donor community, The Table. To help us support more parents and other caring adults through culture translation, we love to invite you to check out The Table by clicking right here. Also, if you've been impacted by what we do, would you consider letting us know with a like, comment, or a subscription, as well as sharing this episode with someone who you think it could benefit? Thanks for caring about having intentional conversations with the next generation.